Welcome back to Velshi and Rule. Heading into the 2020 election, Americans are feeling pessimistic and unsettled about the state of the nation. That's according to a new poll from NBC News and the Wall Street Journal. It finds 70% of Americans say they feel angry because the political system, quote, seems to only be working for the insiders with money and power like those on Wall Street or in Washington. And on race relations, look at this. 56% of Americans say they have only gotten worse since President Trump took office. We're going to break this down now with Washington Post opinion columnist Jonathan Capehart and former Republican congressman from Florida and NBC political analyst Carlos Curbelo. So, Jonathan, I want to start with you because according to this new poll, you have more than half of Americans believing that race relations have gotten worse since President Trump took office. And based on what we've seen so far in his reelection bid, we know that Trump is going to focus more on race, immigration, deportation, Israel, every other wedge issue that he can think of to create this us versus them dynamic for voters. So it's hard to see how this improves anytime soon.
Right, Jeff. This won't improve anytime soon. We have seen the president's playbook actually since the last 2 weeks in the run-up to the 2018 midterm elections when he ran on using xenophobia and racism, talking about caravans and invasions, all to help Senate races around the country. And the Republicans not only held on to the Senate, but won 2 Senate seats as a result, increased their majority. And so the president is using that same playbook now more than a year out from the election. And so I think you said it was 56% of the American people think that race relations have gotten worse since President Trump has gotten into office. And that number has nowhere else to go but up.
Yeah. And Carlos Curbelo, of those surveyed, you have 6 in 10 describing either a lot or some tension between people of different races in their state. Strikes me that Trump is still popular as ever with the conservative, white, working-class voters who helped him win in 2016. But since this act from the president is one that we know, it's no longer new, do you think his brand of white identity politics will be as effective in the 2020 election with this same group?
Jeff, I really don't think it will be. Something really fascinating is happening in our country. We're seeing the decoupling of feelings related to the economy with general feelings about the country. In the past, if the economy was doing well, most people would respond that the country was on the right track. These days, people know, and we see this in polling, that there's something fundamentally wrong with our country. And I think a lot of voters are going to start rejecting the president's divide and conquer strategy. The president isn't the one who divided our country. I think a lot of this has been simmering for years, but the president certainly exploited and continues to exploit every day the divisions in our country in order to benefit his political brand. I think a lot of voters, especially in suburban America, are starting to reject that. And more importantly, they're starting to understand how dangerous it is for our national fabric. This societal decay is really unhealthy for our country, weakens our democracy, and ultimately weakens our economy as well.
Yeah. And Jonathan, to Carlos's point, there's another poll in this data that found that 68% of adults under the age of 35 are not confident that their children's generation will be better off than them. So that seems like it provides an opening, something of an opening anyway, for Democrats who are making that same argument. What do you think about that?
Well, right. That poll number shows that Democrats have had the right message for a while now. When the American people feel like that their children and their children's children are not going to do as well, and maybe even do worse, that provides an opportunity for Democrats to come in and say that not only from a moral standpoint and a tonal standpoint is the current president of the United States bad for the country and bad for you, but so are his policies. And there are any number of policies that Democrats can point to and say, this is how this is making your life worse. This is how this policy is making the country worse. This is the policy that is making the United States stand alone in the world. And so I think no matter who the Democratic nominee will be a year from now, they're going to be hammering away at that issue because the evidence to support that conjecture, that thought is all out there for everyone to see.
Yeah. And Carlos Curbelo, as the team of producers here and I were poring over this polling data, there was something in here that caught our eye. And it's that topics like having children, religion, patriotism, that ranks much lower on the priority list for the younger generation compared to those ages 55 and up. And as you know, those are traditionally major issues for the GOP. So how should the Republican Party course correct to account for this generational shift?
Well, the bottom line is that swing voters are trending away from Republicans. We certainly saw that in the 2018 election. Really, only the president can change this if he changes course, if he changes his rhetoric. But I think a lot of people would be surprised to see that happen. This is a president who is hyper-focused on his political base and on pleasing them. So I think the advantage for a potential Democratic nominee could be not just in different policy proposals, but also a difference in tone, a difference in approach. Perhaps a unite and win strategy would provide the greatest contrast with the president's obvious divide and conquer strategy. You certainly see Joe Biden trying to find that balance, campaigning hard with the base in the primary, but at the same time indicating that he'd be open to compromising and really changing the tone of our politics. I think Pete Buttigieg tries to do that sometimes as well. I think that a Democrat that can finesse that, find a way to win the primary while also indicating that he or she really wants to focus on healing our country's politics and healing our society, that candidate could have a big advantage going into November against the president.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.